Okay, g'day, welcome back to the shed. The last time I left you I was drinking a beer celebrating we got to this stage, so we're at the dry fit. I need to epoxy it in place. Before we do that, I just do want to sort out, I haven't put the bolts that hold the centerboard in place, and I haven't put the bolts that also prevent this from racking. So I'll just take these frames off now that I've got everything squared up and pre-drilled. Take those off, we'll cut the bolts to size, we'll mix up some thickened epoxy, we'll drop it in, and we're on our way. Okay, so we can take that frame off and I can access that hole, which is quite nice. It's nice looking forward there. We can see sort of things taking shape. It's exciting for me. Okay, so I've got my 316. Just make sure that dome nut's tight. I've got my 316 all thread here. Got the fender washer in place. And I'll pop it through. I like using all thread. Excuse that noise. I do like using all thread, and when I was a person sailing around, I just would not be without it. So I just pull that through, count myself about 1, 2, 3, 4 threads. And I'll just mark it there. So this stuff cuts really nicely with a hacksaw, and generally the threads aren't too damaged, so that's all nice. That's all well and good. So that is 122 is where I've marked it. So that's a good look. I'll just take this dome nut or acorn nut off for the time being. Before I cut it, I will just pop a mild steel nut on there. So when I cut it, if I do muck up the thread a bit, I can just unwind that thread off there and it'll restore the threads. I don't want to use a stainless nut. Mild steel is not quite as hard as stainless, and there's no risk of galling. So most people would know what galling is, but if you haven't heard of that, what that means is little fragments of stainless steel can sometimes come off, little chips that you can't see are in there. And when you try and remove a stainless nut off stainless thread, the localized pressure can generate heat very, very quickly that you can't sense, and it can weld those little bits of stainless steel to the main body of the other one, and you can actually jam a nut on there. By using this dissimilar metal in this instance, that gets rid of that. Oh, well, so that hacksaw did a really nice job, didn't muck up the threads at all, and everything goes on there just fine. In the plans, when you put this bush in, there's like a little chamfer there, and that's to take an O-ring. But rather than using O-ring, I actually like using butyl rubber. So it is a little bit of a messy product, but it's very, very versatile. I find it very useful. I found it when I was bedding deck hardware on my boat in the past. I found it incredibly useful. So you only need a small amount of it, and as I draw this up, it will find its way into that gap, press out, and it will also flatten out over this O-ring. Some people don't like it because it can be a little bit messy, but in this application, I don't think it will be, so it'll be fine. Put it on that side. And it's quite inexpensive. Not that O-rings are expensive things. But I also know that I'll be able to carry a bit of this stuff around. It's very useful for all sorts of things. So sometime in the future, if I see that this is leaking, not that I expect it to, butyl rubber is pretty long-lasting stuff. If I find that it's doing a bit of any leaking at all, I'll be able to easily rectify that.
best thing to clean up butyl rubber is butyl rubber. Before gluing the bulkheads to the centre case, I coated any raw wood with unthickened epoxy. For this application, I'm using West Systems 413 glue powder as the epoxy thickening agent. Pre-locating and drilling the screw holes is key to a smooth workflow at this stage.
Okay, now for the glue mixture for the bottom of the center case, I'm going to make it a little bit thicker. So those panels, those bulkheads that I put it on each end of the center case, they're there to hold the center case vertical. I used fairly thin mix to put that on, just a standard glue mix like mayonnaise. I'm going to make this mix that's going to go underneath the center case and onto the bottom panel just a bit thicker, and the reason being is there's just a little, the slot where the center case goes down into, gravity's going to pull some of that mix down through. I don't mind if it sort of oozes out, I just don't want it just running out. Anyway, this stuff, very, very strong glue, probably not the best thing to breathe, so a face mask it is. Once it's all been mixed off, then you can take off your mask. So a little bit thicker than that, I think.
If it's not obvious, there is glue along the bottoms of both bulkheads.
So even with a fairly thick epoxy, there's still a bit of a goo factor. Stuff dripping out and everything. It's only so thick that I can make it. That looks pretty good along there. Of course, there's going to be a nice big fillet that goes through there, so I'll take care of that. There's a nice bit of squeeze out on these panels though, so it looks like I've got enough. But what I do need to do is clamp them down now, and I absolutely need to make sure they're on their lines so that they dry at 90 degrees to the center line. So looking under here, there's probably not as much squeeze out as I would like. But what I can do is load up a syringe and I can sort of get it in and under there. This one's a good one to see. You can actually, it's squeezing under, and then as it fills up, it starts to come out. Under here at the bottom of the frame is a good candidate for syringing, just because these angles mean that this is not at exact right angles with this bottom panel. It's going through a curve. So even though I've glued up the wooden stiffener down the bottom, there's still a little bit open here. But that's easy to remedy, like squeezing epoxy under there. You get a really good feel for how much is going under as well. So here there's like a beaver here, and I will be putting a fillet through there, but I can recover a fair bit of that as I clean up, as well as pushing it under that center case log all really, really easily, a fair bit. So I've still got the other side to do. So being able to save on materials, save on clean-up work later on, and most importantly save on sanding, because sanding's a pain, and sandpaper, good sandpaper is expensive. Cheap sandpaper isn't that expensive, but it'll cost you in time and probably emotion. So clean up as you go, and you won't use nearly as much expensive epoxy. This cleanup's going pretty well. I was particular in areas like this where another bit of wood's going to go later on, not to leave any epoxy to cure in there. Otherwise, you won't be able to fit the thing in. You'll have to sand it out. I talked about one of these grout tools before on a multi-tool. They are particularly good if you've screwed up getting into tight spots and getting rid of epoxy, but we're not going to need to because I'm being a little bit meticulous and I've got plenty of working time in this cold, rainy weather, so that's there's an upside to it. Okay, so the next step, now that all of this is done, is to glue my stem piece in. I've taken the screws out so I don't cover those over and make life a little bit tough further down the road. Rather than getting that unwieldy bit of wood in place now, I have got a bit of aluminium channel that was laying around from another project. It's the same width, which is nice. So I can just pop that in where it's going to go, at that bit of frame, and I can look along, and because it's channel, I can look down the middle a little bit like a rifle sight, get the pencil line directly in the middle. Yeah, that looks good. And now I can line up this. So I've just got a little bit of 2" by 2" right angle. I took the liberty of just taping a bit of greased baking paper there. Epoxy doesn't stick to it, so I'm not going to make this part of my boat when I come to glue that bit of wood in. And now I can just sort of put that up against there, knowing fairly confidently that it will have the bit of ply nicely centered when I come to clamp it to this bit of metal. So what I want from the stem is that it's equally straddling the line, so dead center over the line. I want it straight. Metal is a lot straighter than wood, even plywood. It'll have a few jiggles in it. So now I've got something to clamp to, and also it'll be vertical, because I do want to keep it at right angles. We can glue that in, and that'll be one of the more challenging glue ups actually out of the way. So a nice thing about building a boat is it throws up all sorts of interesting challenges. So one of them is getting a clamp onto there. It's not that difficult, but it's just a little bit of a wrinkle. So obviously no clamps are deep enough throat, but I can clamp this bit of wood with sufficient force that it will hold it down. This is such an unwieldy piece. Okay, it slides in nicely there. Okay, great. So it's very nice that we've got these lightning holes. Not lightning as in lightning from the sky, but lightning as in make lighter. It's very nice. These will be really great for clamping. So hats off to the designer for that. I don't know if he really meant it for that, but there we go. It's a nice accident. So I'm quite pleased with this amount of squeeze out, not too much. I'm not needing too much of a clean up. When I was putting that bit of metal in there, some of the more astute people following along will be like, oh, how's he going to clean up the other side with the squeeze out? Well, I'm not. So I can do this side and I can make this nice and neat, but I will have to probably use the multi-tool to clean up the squeeze out on the other side. But at the moment, I'm pretty happy if the other side looks like this, and we've got moderate squeeze out all along without any large gaps that I can see. I'll be absolutely thrilled. So I guess hats off with the plans there. This bottom panel, once it's been attached to the strongback, and this bottom shape of this stem piece, they are mirroring each other quite nicely, so I don't have big irregularities that I need to fill up with the glue. So I have been able to just, that was the consistency I went with, just a little bit thicker than mayonnaise. And that's about what West Systems recommend for if you're going to bond two components together and you think there might be some larger gaps that you need to bridge, not too thin a consistency. So, but I haven't gone crazy with that. That's not too bad. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with how vertical it is. I'm happy with how straight it is. I'm happy with the amount of glue squeeze out. I guess I'm just happy. So it's really good. It is nice to have the little card scraper that fits under these clamps. So there we go. this is something else I'm happy about. Well, this is something. We've got the stem piece clamped and gluing. We'll get to back to that tomorrow, but I was just having a look forward at the plans about putting other bulkheads in. And this bulkhead here, this particular one, the bottom, this support, that log lines up nicely. This top support lines up. This one doesn't. This one's out by 1 inch. Now, a commenter did write into me and say that there was a problem with this and its positioning. I'd already seen that there was a problem in the plans, that the measurements weren't quite right. I took the angle off this actually for with a protractor, and it doesn't look too, it looked right. But now I get to this point, and when the commenter was when they were telling me about it, I was like, oh well, I've glued everything together now, so I'm just going to have to see what happens. So I'm pretty confident that this is correct. I think maybe this one was wrong because the measurement was completely wrong. But let me just go and muck around with the computer. I'll go to the forums and I'll see what I can come up with, and we'll see where the problem lies. All right. Well, that wasn't great. On the forums, someone has posed the question before, and it was some time ago actually, that this measurement was out, and people got their heads together, and the final thing was sort of like, wait till the end and see how things all line up. That doesn't work out very well because you have to screw and glue this in place and drop it in. If we have a look at the center case, and I'll just superimpose the plans over it. Now you can see that everything's pretty spot on. All right, there's a little bit of distortion because of the camera angle that I'm using, but if we go back to it, you can see that the supports and everything, they are perfectly in line. So I'm based on that, I'm fairly confident that I did everything as well as I could according to those plans. So the plans are incorrect. Is the only way to put it. Now, if we look back in time on those Facebook posts, it looks like that this problem's been known about for a while. So I try not to be too critical because the plans are available at quite a inexpensive price. The designer's making these plans available for people to use and everything. But let me just say this: it is a commercial product. You are paying for it. This problem has been known for a while. So if someone can please get Mr. Welsford's ear, get him to correct those plans, because this is disappointing. Now, it is only, I think the fix that I can do is just make that measurement, get that measurement there and make a wedge, and I can laminate it in both sides. But still, it's satisfying to me to take something from the plans, be meticulous and get it right. When I was gluing this together, it's quite exciting that everything was sort of lining up. To have something like this, it's a little bit disheartening. So if you are building one of these boats and you're at the early stages, just go to the Facebook page, or just make sure that when you're doing the dry fit of all of these, put them just next to each other and make sure that they line up. All right, because that's a real bummer. Well, there we are. We'll just put that. That's a nice dry fit in place. So I've removed that bit of channel. I can actually see just up here that there is a bit of epoxy squeeze out. It's not at its maximum hardness at the moment, so I can take a chisel and remove just some of the bulk, but later on I'll go through with that grout removing tool and really clean that up. So I need to glue these in place. I can't just plonk it there and hope for the best. I can't put a spirit level on and get it vertical. I just have to make sure it's parallel with there. So I can measure to the bottom of it fairly easily, and then make sure a brace from here is exactly the same distance, and we'll do it that way.
So just a very quick look at the prep that I've done. I've put all my stops in just where there's not going to be any glue. There's one on this side, there's one on the other side there. I've measured what the angle is to be correct, but I will be bracing it. But just so I can easily put it in place, I've put a line just in there. So everything should be just slotted in, line it up, and then clamp these on it to hold that angle, and it should be in place. Okay, well that's gone in really well. Everything looks a little bit confusing, but I've run my rule over everything. Everything's fairly parallel with that back, so that looks great. It's kind of hard to get in there, but I have managed to scrape out any of the bleed out there. I've recovered that. I'm going to thicken some of that and put some fillets, but I think before I do that, I might just put bulkhead number 1 in. It's actually got on the front bit of frame, it's actually got a stop there. And I measured everything up before, and it's got the right angle, so it's very, very straightforward just to glue that in place. I might do that. Then, yeah, this is just asking to have some fillets put in. I'll put a couple in there, and then once that's all gone off, yeah, this should be nice and secure. So I'll just quickly glue that one in place. Try and find a few clamps that I might have left. I don't think I have got any left, but I'll devise something. Pop that in place, put the glue on. We'll have got all of these frames in.
I gave things a bit of a clean up with spirits to ensure a dust-free glue surface. Having only a modest collection of clamps, sometimes improvisation is required.
Okay, so there we go. We've got all of our bulkheads and the stem in. Everything looks a bit complicated. From here on out, there's nothing exciting going on, so I might just end the episode right here. I've just got a bit of cleaning up to do. I might be able to get some fillets in, but we'll see how we go. I don't want to waste this last remaining bit of epoxy. So, thank you to everyone, as usual. We really appreciate all your contributions, whether it's your helpful and kind comments, whether it's financial. There's been some of that, so that's really great. When you join us next time, we'll be working aft, so if you've already built one of these boats or you've got a bit of knowledge about it, if you think I'm going to run into a few pitfalls back there, give us a heads up in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you. If you have anything to say about what we've done here, if it could be more smooth or whatever, not necessarily for my benefit because I've already done it, but a lot of people do read the comments actually. You might be helping someone else out, so there you go. Again, thank you, and I better get back to work.